Hey, how you doing? It's Clayton Tini from the First Home Buyer Club. 100 lessons in 100 days, day 82, lesson 82. Today, what I want to talk about is the 18 mistakes most first home buyers make when purchasing their own home and what you should do about it to make sure you're not one of them. So I'm only going to talk about 8 of the 18 today, but here we go. So first one what I want to discuss is buying land and rushing out and purchasing it before you find the build. Now, there's a few mistakes that can be made in this. Firstly, you might go out to the land and look like it's okay, but then when you're looking at the disclosure plan, find out that there's an easement running down the entire side of the boundary, or that there's a setback issues because it's a corner block. Or more importantly, in what we saved a client from purchasing a home because he went out there and the agent told him it was a great block, was that 3 meters in from the side of the boundary was a retaining wall going the entire length down the block. Now, unfortunately, if he had have purchased that block of land, he would have only been able to get a house on it that was 7 meters wide. Now, think about this, because the garage is nearly 6 meters in itself for a double garage. And he's got 1 meter on top of that to build the house. It would have been the biggest issue in the world. And so make sure that you're doing your own research or working with someone like us that does all the research and make sure that you are buying the best block possible. Point number 2, inaccurate site costs or level of inclusions. And what I mean by that is that if you're not getting a fixed price contract, you really need to understand the block of land that you're purchasing and if there's any issues with it. So here's a good example, right? If you buy a battle axe block, that's a rear block where it's been chopped into 2, especially that hasn't come from a new development, the chances are you won't have electricity power, obviously same thing, and water coming to the back of the block. You probably also won't have a water meter, and with these things missing, it's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. You need to do the research up front, and it's really hard to understand by just having a look at a block if these things can be identified. The other thing you need to be concerned about, if it's a mum and dad developer that split 1 block into 2, you don't know what the strength of that concrete driveway is taking you to the rear of the block. All these things can really start to blow out the budget before you've even started, right? The other thing with you need to understand is how much it's going to cost for fencing. Is it included? Is it going to be 50-50 with the neighbor? Is there any fall on the block? So if the fall, if it's not a flat block, there's fall. It might fall to the front of the block. It might fall to the back of the block. Or the worst thing is when it falls from front to back or back to front on angles. So you not only you don't have an even fall, it's rough. And that obviously, again, will cost extra money in retaining, in benching, in site costs, in peering. There's a lot of money that really starts to blow the budget. And if you haven't allowed for it in the site costs up front, guess who's the sucker that's got to pay for it all? Point number 3, and you hear me talk about it a lot, is display home traps. And why I want to talk about it is because when you walk through a display home, they look amazing. But you often, rarely, never pretty much get exactly what's included in that house and what you saw standard with that home. They've upgraded tiles, they've upgraded carpets, they've put in lights in the ceiling, and they've got raked ceilings, and all these extra crazy expensive items that you thought you were going to get that suddenly aren't included, and now you're having to pay 10, 20, 30, 40 grand extra to try and get them in. It's not something you can just throw in and speak to the bank about changing a loan. Once you're approved for that loan, there's no changing it. Point number 4, unrealistic building times. Now, this is comes in play in a few ways. Now, the first one is If your builder is working really slowly up to a certain point, they're suddenly not going to just click their or wand and build 2 months worth of home in the space of 2 weeks. Understand these things, especially if you're moving from interstate or moving from a rental property, or after 8 months with the in-laws you're at boiling point and just need to get out. Don't put extra pressure on yourself when it comes to these things, and make sure that you read the contract, because most build contracts will say on average 180 days to build, including weather and all the rest. What you need to ensure when you sign the contract is how much would you get each day if they go over that? And if that amount is $10, $20, $30, that won't even cover your interest repayments should the worst thing ever happen. You don't want to be out of pocket and still waiting for your home to be built. We have heard of horror stories before. Most of our builds, unless there's crazy weather, get done in approximately 14 to 16 weeks on average. So we want to get you in and out. But there are builders out there that are struggling and obviously low on finance and budget, and they can't afford to buy their materials up front or put it on tick and pay for it later. That does drag out your build. And again, the only one that gets punished for this is you. Point number 5, misunderstanding the site plans or the house plans. You need to understand the house plans and site plans to know how big your bedrooms are, how big the window is, where does the glass sliding door open, what sort of windows do you have at the front of the house, is there any fall on your block, what are the inclusions inside of the house, and how does that sit? There's a lot of things that we just take for granted because we don't quite understand. And as a result, it's often a shock at the end if it hasn't been explained. Make sure you understand these things and ask the questions of things you don't. Point number 6, not having a turnkey home and also cost plus contracts. So here's the thing with a cost plus contract. You might find, and again, I'm not here to bag anyone out or start to name call or point the finger, but a lot of bigger builders from time to time, they'll only put in allowances for things. Allowance of $1,000 for turfing, allowance for $2,000 for fencing, allowance for this, allowance for that. And all of a sudden you start to find that you're $1,000 out here that you've got to pay for extra, and $2,000 there that you've got to pay extra, and then $3,000 there. The other thing you need to really understand is what are the inclusions in the home and what's the level of the standard inclusions. If you've been watching my page for a while, you'll know that we include $40,000 worth of luxury upgrades with every home because we're able to buy at a cheaper rate. 1,200 front door, raised ceilings, full render, 600 by 600 tiles. We want to make sure when you get in the home, you're spending minimal money on that house, because we want to buy a house to create an asset that goes up in value and not overspend at the start. Point number 7, and this is really a follow-up from that one, is the cheapest start from builders. Often we get questioned from clients, and really it's more those that are ringing up and just trying to get figures that have been to a cheaper or start from builder and had those quotes. Now, here's the problem. If nothing is included in that home, or not everything is included, how can you compare apples with apples? And the problem is that when you're trying to get the cheapest possible house, you're never going to be satisfied. So then after you've got the approval, then you start realizing all the shortfalls, and that's where variation after variation comes through, and cost after cost, and costs for just creating those variations come through as well. Make sure that you're buying the house and you know the inclusions you're getting, and they are to a higher level than what you expect. You know what they say, cheap isn't good and good isn't cheap. Point number 8, and this is the last one. You've heard me talk about it a lot before, but free money companies. So it was funny. Even this morning, I saw someone that there was a company offering turn $25,000 into $60,000. And I was like, man, that's really cool. They're throwing in $35,000. That would be amazing if it was true. But as you've heard me talk about it before, how often have you given a random on the street $500 or even $100 for that matter? And when you understand that, unless you are throwing money out for no reason, you'll understand that how does it make sense that suddenly one company, just out of the goodness of their heart, is going to give you $35,000 for no reason at all, just because they want to give it to you. You know what's going on, right? They're adding it onto the price. And it's not just the $35,000 you got to worry about now, because it's the interest on the $35,000 that you thought you were getting for free, that by the time you pay it off at the end, probably works out to be like $65,000 or $70,000. Now, you thought you were getting the good end of the stick because they were giving you $35,000. But if you look back and find out that you've actually had to pay back $70,000 or even $50,000 or $60,000, depending on your interest rate, just to get the privilege of free money that was just added onto the price of the build, are you still going to be so grateful then? Understand the numbers and understand that people can't possibly give away $35,000 to $40,000 of free money without taking it from somewhere. And what they're doing is they're taking it from the build and just giving it back to you. You don't want to play that game, because by the time you pay it off and all the extra, you're paying back way more than you ever thought possible. If you're buying a home, you should be buying a home for a few reasons. 1, security. 2, to create wealth. And 3, for your future. Don't get that confused, guys, or we'll start calling them cars. All right, I hope you have a good night, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.